Two innkeepers. Same town, same road, same rent. One of them ended up in Parliament. The other died owing a full year's rent to a college he never repaid. Same business, same gate, same travelers walking through it every single day. So what actually made the difference? Not luck, not location. Something in how each of them ran the exact same building. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what that something was, and whether you'd have made the same mistake he did. It's 1450. You've just signed the lease on the Angel Inn, in the market town of Andover, England. 16 chambers, a stable yard big enough for dozens of horses, a hall 30 feet by 20, big enough to seat 50 people at once, room enough, all told, for 50 or 60 guests a night. Sounds good? Here's the catch. None of it is actually yours. Winchester College owns every timber of this building. They paid roughly £400 to build it, 90 of that on carpentry alone. In coins, that's 96,000 silver pennies. At a carpenter's wage of 5 pence a day, that building represents almost 74 years of one skilled man's labor, poured into walls you will never own. You're not buying the inn, you're renting the right to make money inside it, and taking on every risk the college doesn't want. Your rent is due in one lump sum, £8 a year. That's 1,920 pennies. Roughly a year and a half of a carpenter's wages, gone before you've served a single cup of ale. And rent has no interest in your excuses. Empty beds, a bad harvest, a road washed out by rain. £8 is still £8. Tonight, the gate opens. Whatever happens next is entirely your problem. You'd assume the money is in the ale. It isn't. Not really. But it's what gets people through the door. So let's start there. A traveler arrives on the road. He's tired, his horse is tired, and he has exactly one option for shelter tonight. You. That's the entire business model. Not competition. Not marketing. Just distance. And the fact that shopping around has become expensive the moment the sun starts setting. Here's what one real travel account from the period shows. 7 mounted travelers stop for the night. They pay 4 pence for bread, 2 pence for beer, a little over a penny for wine, 5.5 pence for meat. Their beds cost them 2 pence each. Notice something? Bread, beer, wine, and meat combined don't even reach the price of a single night's lodging. Sounds good? Here's the catch. None of these numbers are where the real money sits, and we'll come back to that. Every guest who walks through your gate is really several customers stacked into one person. He pays for his room, his food, his drink. If he's a merchant, he pays to store his goods somewhere dry and watched. And if his purse runs a little short this month, he might ask you for credit, which, if you say yes carefully, keeps him coming back for years. At full capacity, on a strong trading day, 15 travelers might pass through your gate. Over a good 300-day season, that adds up to roughly £88 in total revenue. Travelers, local trade, and meetings combined. £88 sounds enormous next to a carpenter's wage. It's worth more than 16 years of his daily pay, moving through one building in a single season. But revenue was never the hard part of this business. Keeping it is. Then the harvest fails. Not the fire. Not a bad night in the hall. The grain. Bread costs more. Ale costs more. Because ale is made from grain too. Fodder for the horses costs more. Meat, which depends on grain-fed livestock, often follows right behind. And the travelers who were supposed to be paying you? They have less to spend. At the exact moment your own costs go up. That is the trap sitting underneath this entire business. Your expenses and your customers' wallets move in opposite directions at exactly the same time. Run the numbers on a week season, 10 travelers a day instead of 15, and your revenue drops to around £59. After provisions, rent, wages, fuel, and the usual spoilage, you're left with something like £7 of surplus for the entire year. £7 isn't nothing, but it isn't a cushion either. One serious roof repair, one bad run of unpaid tabs, one expensive grain season. Any one of those can swallow it whole. And if traffic falls further still, down to 5 travelers a day, in a shortened trading season, revenue collapses to around £25. Your costs barely move. Rent is still £8. Your staff still needs paying. The result is a loss of roughly £13 for the year. A fall of 2/3 in your traffic doesn't just shrink your profit. It turns a genuinely attractive business into one that's borrowing money just to keep its doors open. Your real enemy isn't a bad night in the tavern. It's fire, timber walls, Open flame in every room, dry straw in the stables, candles burning long past midnight, sitting a few feet from a barn full of hay. In 1434, a fire tore through Andover. Half the town's rents became uncollectible for years afterward. The damage was severe enough that local authorities granted tax relief just to keep the town functioning. There was no insurance company coming to rebuild you, no claim to file, no payout arriving in 6 weeks. One spark, one dry night, and decades of accumulated rent and stock could vanish before morning. And it wasn't hypothetical for the Angels specifically. Winchester College built this inn not long after that fire. The risk wouldn't have felt distant to them. It would have felt like something that had already happened, one street over. Every choice you make as an innkeeper, where you place the candles, how close the hay sits to the kitchen, whether you let a servant leave a fire untended overnight, is a decision made in the shadow of that risk. Get complacent for one season, and you don't lose a bad night's takings. You lose the building. A merchant wants credit. He's good for it most months, but market day was bad, and he's asking you to extend him until the next one. Say yes, and you keep a loyal customer who spends more with you over time, and who brings you something almost as valuable as coin: information. Who's buying, who's selling, what's scarce this month, and what's about to flood the market. Say no, and he takes his trade elsewhere, and his gossip about prices, shortages, and buyers goes with him, to whichever innkeeper down the road was willing to extend the trust you weren't. There's no clean ledger entry for this decision. No rulebook that tells you which merchants are worth the risk and which ones will leave you holding an unpaid tab. You're making a bet on character, based on a handful of visits and a reputation you're only partly sure of. Real records from this world show both outcomes. One tenant, Robert Cuss, built up rent arrears worth nearly a full year's payment, money that simply never arrived, quietly rotting the business from the inside with no dramatic collapse, just a promised sum that kept not showing up. Richard Kingsmill, an innkeeper in nearby Basingstoke, made the opposite bet, over and over. He extended trust to the right people, again and again. He sold horse bread and oats, he dealt in cloth, he owned 200 sheep and leased a manor. He became the town's bailiff, received its highest wealth assessment, and eventually sat in Parliament. Same decision, different men, wildly different outcomes. Everyone assumes the inn made its money on beds and ale. It didn't. The real business was standing in your stable yard the whole time. Go back to that travel account. 7 mounted travelers. Their beds cost 2 pence each. Their horses' fodder cost 10 pence, combined, more than 5 times what the men paid to sleep. Think about why. A traveler can skip supper if he has to. He can share a bed or sleep in the hall for a lower fee. His horse cannot decide to eat less because the price feels high tonight. The animal needs its oats and hay, regardless of what its owner is willing to pay, and you are the only supplier for miles. Every additional rider who arrives doesn't just bring one more guest. He brings one more captive customer with zero ability to negotiate. An animal that has to eat, on your terms, at your price. Scale that stable yard across a full season, and it isn't a side charge anymore. It's arguably the most reliable, least resistant revenue line in the entire business. Beds compete with the room down the hall. Ale competes with the tavern across the square. Hay and oats, sold to a hungry horse with nowhere else to go, compete with nothing at all. The most successful innkeepers understood this instinctively. They didn't just sell hospitality to people. They ran a second business entirely, a monopoly on animal feed, hiding in plain sight inside what looked, from the road, like an ordinary inn. That is what separated a Richard Kingsmill from a man drowning in unpaid rent. Not the ale he poured, the stable he controlled. So, here's the truth. You didn't buy an inn. You bought the only building on this road where a tired man, a hungry horse, and a merchant's cargo all had nowhere else to go. The ale gets the traveler through your gate. It's the smallest part of what he ends up paying you before morning. Run this business carelessly, as a drinking room, and nothing more. And you'll earn a modest living, if the harvest cooperates and the fire never comes. Run it the way Richard Kingsmill did, as a transport hub, a credit desk, a trading post, and a monopoly on the one thing every traveler's horse cannot live without. And an ordinary lease on a building you'll never own can still open the door to real wealth. Same gate, same rent, same £8 a year. The difference was never the building, It was what you understood about everyone forced to walk through it.